What does DSLR mean? More baffling stuff explained in less than 10 minutes. Hi and welcome to episode 55 of the Photography Explained podcast. I'm your host Rick, and in each episode I will explain one photographic thing in plain English in less than 10 minutes-ish without the irrelevant details. What I tell you is based on my lifetime of photographic experience, not Google. Well, there might be the odd thing that I had to look up, but mainly this is the stuff that I know. And I'm going to try and speak all the words this time. This is a bit of a warning, this might be a long one. 10 minutes is not looking good here, because this is quite a fundamental question really. Not that the things I've answered before weren't. Well, let's just get into it, let's see where it takes us. What does DSLR mean? I've been looking forward to this one, which is driven by the need for me to explain this before I can possibly explain what a mirrorless camera is. Just think about the name mirrorless camera. I never said that the camera should have a mirror, so why are you telling me it hasn't got one? Well, let's get into this and we will find out what a mirrorless camera is by finding out what a camera with a mirror is. Here is the answery bit. A DSLR is a digital single lens reflex camera. Digital refers to the sensor in the camera, which takes digital images, not film. Single lens is the camera lens that you look through when you're taking a photo. Reflex is the pentaprism and mirror arrangement built into the camera that enables you to look through the camera lens rather than a separate viewfinder. So I guess this makes sense, even if it feels like an odd term for a camera. I mean, DSLR, there must be other terms that we could use, but there is a logic. Yeah, we'll get onto that in the episode. So, evolution. Before DSLRs, you had things called SLRs. Back in the day, everyone used SLRs. These were film cameras, single lens reflex cameras with film in them, and that's what I started with. I mean, there were other cameras around, but you didn't have the range of cameras you have now. You had other formats, other types, but if you were a hobbyist, advanced amateur, professional, you were probably using a DSLR or a medium format. Now, I explained medium format last time, so I don't need to go on to that. DSLR is an SLR with a D in front of it. D for digital. I guess that they should have been called FSLRs, but when they came up with SLRs, they didn't know that film was going to change to digital. It's that long ago that SLR was before we knew what digital was, so we need to remember the history and the evolution. And I need to give a bit more respect to some of these things that have evolved over the years, because there are logical explanations. Simple, crude terms. On an SLR, you have a film. You wind the film on and you take a photo. You take the film chamber off the back, chuck a sensor in, put a new back on it, and there you have it, DSLR. Sort of. Film cameras were predominantly 35mm, which has evolved into a full-frame camera. Now, I'm not going to go back through full frame and all the other good stuff because that was covered in previous episodes. But that's the basic evolution. SLR evolved over the years. DSLR is the digital version and things have moved on from there. What I'm going to focus on here, I'm going to ignore all the other bits of the camera. I'm going to stick to the DSLR bit because it's relevant to the mirrorless bit, and that's where I want to get with this. The rest is all stuff for the future. DSLR. Basically, you look through the optical viewfinder at the back of the camera, and you're looking through the camera lens. So if we look at the other way around now, so from the outside in, light comes in through the camera lens when it meets a mirror, which sends the light up and into a pentaprism. The pentaprism is the thing that takes the light from the mirror and through clever stuff sends it out of the viewfinder, and this is the light that you're looking at. So this is where I get technical. What is a pentaprism? It's the sticky out bit on the top of the camera. On a DSLR, and an SLR indeed, there's a bit sticking up at the front. That's where the pentaprism is. And what is a pentaprism? It's something complicated and technical and clever that basically takes the light and directs it down, and that is enough for me. What I haven't written in the notes here, which would have been quite helpful, where's the mirror? Now on a camera film, the mirror is in front of the camera film. So old school SLR, when you press the shutter button, the mirror flips up and the shutter opens, exposing the sensor to light, film to light. Go to digital, same thing. You've still got the mirror. On a mirrorless camera, you haven't got the mirror. Why? Well, when these things were invented, we did not have these things called EVFs, electronic viewfinders. One for another episode. You had a separate viewfinder that was fixed. The clever thing about the SLR, the groundbreaking bit, was that it changed from looking through a viewfinder, which was pointing in the same direction as what your camera was pointing at, to looking through the actual lens. Now, if you think about this, you zoom in or out, you're seeing exactly what is happening. Now, there were viewfinders on cameras that could replicate this, but this is exact. And there's another thing, which I haven't mentioned yet. If you stop down the aperture, you could actually see the effect of stopping down the aperture by pressing what is called the depth of field preview button. So you're seeing what is happening in your camera. Think about it, it's clever. So what you saw was pretty much what you photographed. I think in modern terms we call that WYSIWYG, but this is from a day when we didn't have such nonsense. DSLR is a logical evolution from the 1930s to the late 1980s, early 1990s when DSLRs came in. So whilst it might seem an odd term, hopefully it makes sense now. I feel a bit happy having done a bit more research into this one because this is one of those things that I've lived with all my life. Well, not the concerns or anything. I've experienced SLR, DSLR and mirrorless. I've been there for a big part of the process. If you think about this, when this happened, SLRs and DSLRs are not strange things, but they're miracles created by genius people that should be celebrated. I touched on this before. The more I look into these things, the more I am understanding the history and the evolution of strange terms in photography and how we've ended up with these often baffling terms and things. And quite often, in fact, probably in most cases, there will be a logical explanation for the term. I mean, forget ISO, that's just out there, isn't it? So yes, I want to be amusing, interesting and entertaining, but I think I also want to treat some of these terms with respect because SLR is a genius bit of precise engineering. DSLR is an even more complicated adaptation of that old engineering. Looking forward to the next episode. Oh, not onto that yet, am I? Sorry. My one-line explanation. DSLR is digital single lens reflex. That's a camera with one lens and an optical arrangement which lets you look through the actual camera lens. When you are composing, I got so far in there without making a mistake, didn't I? When you are composing a photo, and I've been using DSLRs for years, and before that, SLRs. Okay, I thought this was going to be a long one. Not the case, that's quite surprising. Next episode, 56. What is a mirrorless camera? Yeah, I'll say it again. The mirror on a DSLR is the bit that you're looking through. The image is bounced up off the mirror. So you take the mirror out of the way, the sensor is there without a mirror in the way. So what is a mirrorless camera? I'm struggling there, aren't I? Tell you what, let's start that bit again. Next episode, 56. What is a mirrorless camera? I will take the DSLR explanation and explain why a mirrorless camera doesn't have a mirror and why it's called a mirrorless camera. Okay, I'm going to stop there. This is in danger of going badly downhill, isn't it? Things you can do to help me. Well, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to help me, please leave a nice review and rating wherever you get your podcast from. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode and share my podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my small but perfectly formed podcast. My websites, check out rickmcavoyphotography.com to find out about me and my photography blog, and also the Photography Explained podcast website, where you can find out all about this podcast, what I'm going to answer, and you can ask me a question of your own. This episode was brought to you very much by the power of caffeine and a chocolate digestive. I've been Rick McEvoy. Thanks again very much for listening to me and for giving me just over 11 minutes of your valuable time, and I will see you on the next episode. Cheers from me, Rick.